Aloha. Welcome to the Holistic Life Mastery Radio Show. I'm your host, Ronnie Landis, and I could not be more excited to share this segment with you guys than I am right now. And before we get into that, I just want to let everyone know that my Holistic Health Mastery Nutrition Certification course is available at holistichealthmastery.com. This is an incredibly comprehensive, detailed, and extraordinarily well-organized certification course that you can do online. It's primarily video-based, and it's very unique among all the different educational courses, especially the health and nutrition related educational courses, and just something that I'm super stoked about. And it's actually about to go into a new upgrade and evolution. We're going to be releasing the Holistic Health Mastery 2.0 series very shortly. So again, the website for that is holistichealthmastery.com. So today's episode is the start of our interview series. And before we kick off the new interviews that I have in store for all of you guys, I wanted to remaster and present some of the older interviews that I did for my last podcast in 2014 called the Expanded Health and Human Potential Radio Show. And I have 27 of these interviews on my hard drive. And I thought to myself, there is some incredible gems and just jewels that the world deserves to have access to. And so I picked my favorite ones, the ones that I thought were just the most content rich, the most unique and novel, and just probably the best conversations that I've ever had with some of the world's leading health and lifestyle educators and just really powerful, transformative human beings walking this planet right now. So today's remastered interview is with a very close friend of mine, someone that I consider to be a big brother, someone that I've known for years. And in fact, I really got to connect with him during the very early stages of my transition into health food and raw food. In fact, I met this individual at my first David Wolfe lecture about 5 or 6 years ago in San Francisco, the Bay Area, and what a profound conversation we have in store for you guys. This individual's name is Sacred Steve Adler, and he is the core founder of the company Sacred Chocolate, which was the first company to ever figure out how to create a cold processed raw chocolate bar. This was the company that started the entire raw chocolate movement, the entire raw chocolate industry. And now you literally have, you have people creating raw chocolates, herbal chocolates all over the place. And these were the guys, Steve Adler and his business partner, David Wolfe, actually created the industry. But Steve Adler is such a wealth of insight and information and just powerful spiritual principles that really that's his passion. He created his own religion called the Religion of the Sacred Heart, which is totally dogmatic. It's totally all-inclusive. And basically, he's the minister of the Sacred Heart. And it's all about love. It's a religion based in love. And he applies his principles to the alchemy of chocolatiering. So the conversation that we had is nothing short of astonishing. In fact, I haven't listened to it in years since I recorded it, and I'm just listening to this interview between us, and I'm actually just laughing out loud every 5 or 10 minutes because it was such a powerful and just an incredible conversation. And I think that anybody listening to this is going to get some incredible insights and pearls of wisdom that they can incorporate into their life and just really understand the science and dynamics of love and how creating more space and fostering an environment of love and appreciation gratitude, and really taking better care of our relationships, both with ourselves and with other people, just magnifies the wellspring of abundance that we can create in the world. So without further ado, I want to introduce my good friend and older brother, Mr. Sacred Steve Adler. Enjoy, you guys. Hey everyone, this is Ronnie Landis bringing you another edition of the Expanded Health and Human Potential radio show. And today is very, very special. I'm bringing on a guest who's very close to me, and I have an incredible amount of respect and admiration for. He is a pioneer in the field of raw chocolatiering, and really actually is him and his partner David Wolf have literally spearheaded entire revolution and movement in the raw cacao, raw chocolate industry. It's totally inspired me. It's inspired hundreds of thousands of people around the world, literally, and it's created a completely new industry in the food world. And there's so many different things I could say about this man, but we're just going to jump into a whole bunch of juicy topics. So without further ado, I'm bringing on Sacred Steve Adler.
All right. Thanks, Ronnie. Well, hey, it's totally an honor to be here, especially with you. You're such a mover and shaker in the entire raw food world, super food world, super herb, elixir, cacao, craft, and super chocolate world, and I'm stoked to be associated with you. I'm stoked to be on this podcast with you.
Right on, man. Yeah, and it's because of people like you that makes it possible for people like me and my generation to make things easier as we progress and try to take this movement forward. So I totally appreciate that.
Right on.
So for everyone listening, I mean, most people are probably familiar, but for those that aren't familiar with you, you are the founder of Sacred Chocolate.
Yeah, that's right. Basically, a little background on that is that I got into the whole realm of raw and living foods back in 1993 after reading Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power. Chapter 10 in that book really was an inspiration for me to get into it. And a few years after that, I met my good buddy and now business partner, David Wolf, and we started hanging out a lot. And then what happened was David, around the year 2000 or so, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, started to discover the superfood properties of the raw cacao bean. And he would share it with me. He'd send me bags of cacao beans and stuff like that. And at first, what happened with me was I believed in what he was saying, and I'd add him to my smoothies and stuff for an extra superfood punch to my smoothies. But I never really liked just eating the raw bean. I guess, my palate kind of didn't like that bitterness at first. That's something, it's like a developed taste, kind of like you develop the taste for maybe wine or beer or something else. But David kept sharing the cacao beans with me and talking about them. And I saw that a lot of people were getting behind these raw cacao beans as a superfood, and people were starting to turn them into raw desserts and raw chocolate. And then David came out with his book, Naked Chocolate, in 2004. And right then I went to one of his incredible raw chocolate parties in New York City. I'll never forget. I mean, people were literally just bouncing off the walls, eating raw cacao beans, throwing them up in the air, doing cartwheels. I mean, this was they had taken over an entire like fancy nightclub. And turned it into a raw chocolate extravaganza. I mean, the bar was just serving nothing but raw cacao drinks and smoothies. And I mean, they were like go-go-esque kind of, Burning Man, fire dancers on the stage. It was crazy. But, and that's kind of when, that's when I really caught the craze, the raw cacao craze. That party was the beginning of my journey. And basically, I started playing around in my kitchen with raw chocolate, thinking, I wonder if it's actually possible to make a finely tempered raw chocolate bar, just like your normal kind of chocolate bar that you pick up at a store, but only raw. And so the more I got into it, the more I was like, gosh, I was just, there's got to be a way. And as I studied the chocolate industry and how chocolate's made, I finally figured out, yeah, you can do it. And at that point, I actually approached David Wolf and said, hey, do you want to start a raw chocolate company together? And he said yes. And so that was the birth of Sacred Chocolate back really the end of 2005. Yeah.
That's such an extraordinary story. That's so funny. You're a Stanford trained rocket scientist, right?
Well, that's right. Actually, after school, I got recruited by McDonnell Douglas, which eventually got bought out by Boeing. They no longer even exist as a company. But I went to work on the design of the space station Freedom. I went to work down in Orange County in Huntington Beach as an engineer, a thermal engineer for McDonnell Douglas on that space station program. And man, I just was doing 50 hours a week of Fortran programming, doing computer modeling, and it was pretty dry and boring after a while. I was glad to exit that industry, quite frankly.
It's such an interesting irony to me how all that experience is transferred over from whatever it was, the inspiration from the cacao spirit, the cacao bean, whatever, and it's totally transferred over into, basically, from my estimation, becoming the personification of, Willy Wonka.
Yeah, I even look back on the whole journey and marvel at the whole thing because, what I'm doing right now, I'm kind of utilizing all my talents, everything that I've kind of acquired over my life's journey, whether it be in the area of, buying and selling, marketing, just people skills, managing a team of people, to actually doing thermal analysis, to actually doing, mechanical work and engineering type work. I mean, it's interesting. It's like the business I'm in right now really is a huge challenge and for me, and I really love the challenge. It's fun, it's exciting, and there's always something new. I mean, really, it really is like being in a true Willy Wonka chocolate factory because there's so many things going on. There's so many balls juggling in the air that you're never bored. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I'm curious. You kind of laid it out, like how the chocolate excursion started, but I'm curious, like, were you ever inspired before by like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as a kid?
Well, I love that movie as a kid, and I really get the deeper meaning of that movie seeing it as an adult. The original with Gene Wilder is my absolute favorite. I'm not
Absolutely.
I mean, the later one, Johnny Depp's good, but for me at least, it doesn't even compare to that
not
original
even close.
one.
Absolutely.
It's just. And that movie was fun, exciting for me as a kid. I never really, from that point, I mean, honestly, Ronnie, if somebody had said to me, oh, you're going to be in the chocolate business, if they'd said that to me 10 years ago, I probably would have just laughed in their face. I mean, I would have never, what, chocolate business? And, it's just interesting how one thing leads to another. And so I can't say, honestly, that watching that movie eons ago ever inspired me, to become a chocolate maker. But obviously it was in the mix because I did see it and probably went deep into that subconscious mind. And now, look where I am. So what really inspired me actually to get in this business, besides David Wolf and his whole thing, was actually, really it's my spiritual path. I mean, basically chocolate for me was literally an expression of my love. It was look at it like an artist. An artist expresses his or her love and their vision and their creativity through a medium, whatever that medium is. It could be sculpture, it could be graphic arts, computer arts. It could be music. It could be painting, anything, right? And so, there was an artistic side of me that really wanted to be expressed, and it just so happened that chocolate was that medium for me. And so really what was underneath the chocolate was my own love, my love for health and nutrition, my love for raw foods, my love for building stuff, creating new stuff, my love of entrepreneurship, and my own spiritual path. And what I mean by that is I'm a minister of the Sacred Heart, and my religion is love. And so basically, for me, I viewed chocolate as like the most ideal vehicle to actually deliver love to the world. I mean, I actually pray over the chocolate, and I know the science behind praying over the chocolate. So I actually know what's physically happening when I do that, and I know from a scientific point of view how that's being transferred to everybody out there in the world who consumes sacred chocolate. So that was my real motivation behind getting into the chocolate business, was actually my own spiritual path and a vehicle to transfer my love out into the world.
That's beautiful, and I definitely resonate with that. As you know, I'm definitely a huge proponent and voice for cacao, and coming into it more when it's reached a certain level of popularity. But for me, it's definitely a part of my path, and I definitely had no idea whatsoever that chocolate, cacao, even like raw food would be a part of my path. It's like you said, one thing leads to another, and we could get into it upside down, left side, left, right, sideways about all the magical properties of cacao and how it affects people. Definitely, I'm very interested in neuroscience and affecting the brain through nutrition, really working with degeneration and how to not only reverse it but how to prevent it and how to develop literally genius genetics. And I feel that chocolate is one of the key components to actually do that. And if you look at all the longevity research on chocolate, as you very well know, it's all correlated there. And then obviously the cardiovascular supporting attributes of cacao. It's very well documented. In fact, maybe more well documented and more mythologically referenced or historically referenced than any other single food in the world.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you talk about, stimulating genius. I mean, certainly cacao, being the most complex plant chemistry probably on the face of the planet, is definitely affecting our epigenetics.
Yes.
It's definitely flipping genes on left and right. It's definitely activating genius through all the neurotransmitter chemicals that are present. But quite frankly, that's not my focus with chocolate. Chocolate to me is symbolic of love. It's symbolic of heart. And the higher intelligence is the intelligence of the Sacred Heart. We are leaving the Cyberzoic age right now and entering into the Cardiozoic age. And what I mean by that is that we are entering into the realm of the Sacred Heart. And I'm not talking about the physical heart, that pumps the blood through the body, or what people at least believe pumps the blood through the body. I'm not talking about that heart chakra, which is, part of that chakra system, which is kind of this electromagnetic system of nadis that are running through the body, and it's really part of the whole mind complex. I'm talking about the sacred point at the center of everybody's soul, that point through which your soul enters at birth and that point through which your soul will exit at death. And that's the point that is exciting to me, and that's the point I'm focused on, is that point of the Sacred Heart, the seat of the soul, the God within, the connection to the divine. And that's where your higher intelligence lies. Because quite frankly, the mind, even though it's very complex, it's limited in the sense that it's just part of structure. It's finite in nature. There is a limit to the human mind, but there is no limit to the Sacred Heart. And that Sacred Heart is the portal through which all your love is flowing. And it's the portal through which that love love that's you is also connected to the divine. In fact, the divine is the source of that love. And that love is more powerful than cacao in the sense that that love can actually change your genetics. The DNA molecule is actually designed to be altered through love itself. And I'm talking about the scientific power or fuel or juice that love is. Some people, I have to kind of get into a little bit of the science of what I'm talking about there. But when I'm talking about love, in this sense, I'm talking about primal magnetism. I'm talking about something that's real. I'm talking about something that's a true power that has a magnetic force in the universe. And so that power has the ability to alter genes. And the whole idea of genetic modification through engineering and science is very dangerous because it's basically kind of a wild goose chase. It'll lead us down dark alleys that are just will cause more problems than it'll help us out. I mean, really, the true genetic engineer is love itself. It always has been. It always will be. And so, I mean, obviously, that's why love is so important to go into the chocolate, because that love will affect the genetics, the DNA, besides the epigenetics. So, I mean, that's, and if you look out in the world right now, there's people kind of talk about the struggle between good and evil, but it's really the struggle between the Sacred Heart and the mind is what's going on the surface of this planet right now. I mean, we obviously still live in a kind of a mind-dominated planet. You can just look out with innocent perception and see that. But eventually, the power of this heart that's within each and every one of us, this power that's so huge. I mean, honestly, Ronnie, this power is more powerful than a nuclear reactor. Like, no joke. You've got a nuclear reactor in the center of your chest, and and to tap that energy, like all the sages, all the yogis, all the avatars that have ever walked the earth have, to tap that power is a conscious effort. It's a yoga. It's a continual going back. And the more you do it, the more that portal opens up, to the point where, like recently, just 6 months ago, I had an interesting spiritual experience of my own where it felt like I was about to fall into Mel's hole or something. I was freaked out almost. I was like, whoa. It was like I felt like this portal open up inside my chest on a deep meditation one night while lying in my bed. And I was like, oh my God. It was scary. It literally felt like I was going to fall into Mel's hole. It was ridiculous.
Wow. And what you're talking about is philosophically pleasing, but the truth is it's a very hard science that's actually been proven. I mean, heart math has already shown that the heart generates a magnetic field that's millions of times more powerful than the electromagnetic field or vibration that's pulsating from our mind. And we thought that our brain was the electromagnetic grid, or whatever language you want to use for that, the energetic pulse of the body. We thought that's where all the power was, but now we find out it's actually the heart. And when we connect with another person, the whole thing, like, it's nice to connect with you. Well, what we're actually doing is we're connecting our heart to their heart, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's huge. I mean, when you're connecting with somebody heart to heart, I mean, here's my minister's self kind of piping in here. You're basically loving your neighbor as yourself. To me, that's the definition of loving your neighbor as yourself.
Love thy neighbor.
That's right. I mean, when you're actually in your heart and you can feel that your awareness is there in that sacred center, it's like you can almost experience yourself being in a state of innocence and surrender, but pure acceptance with that other person. And when I connect with somebody heart to heart, and I'm talking with somebody, or maybe not even talking, just sharing space with somebody, that chatter, that little chatter of the mind, that little sort of subtle judgment and evaluation and all those little filters and preconceived ideas, that starts to melt away. The more I'm in my heart and connecting with somebody, the more all those filters of the mind just start like becoming quieter and quieter and start melting away. And when you're in that state, you have such freedom, and there's such peace and joy and love exchanged, it's really phenomenal. And, that gets into the whole science of, what actually is happening here. I gave a video once around Valentine's Day about the science of putting love into chocolate. I think you can probably see it on our website. You go to sacredchocolate.com and search for, if you just do a Google search and search for like rocket scientist, Valentine's puts love in chocolate or something like that, you'll find it. But basically, I'm talking about basically the three components of existence itself, which is love, or like you just said, this intense, incredible, like infinite amount of magnetic energy. Then there's the teeniest particle in existence, which basically all of our physical existence is made up of only one type of particle, just rearranged in different configurations. That's called what I like to call the adamantine particle. But what the top physicists in the world call that particle, they call it the Higgs particle, or sometimes they call it the Higgs boson. And that's the particle that they believe they've just maybe finally have discovered for sure through some recent experimentations at the Hadron Super Collider in Europe, but they said it's going to take them 10 years just to sift through the data to confirm that they've actually truly identified the Higgs boson or the adamantine particle. And then there's this final component called the one spirit, or the scientists call it the unified field matrix. But these three components, everything that is real, that is part of existence as we know it, as we can even conceive it, is made up of these three components. And the beauty of it is that love is the commander of all the adamantine particles. That's why if you are really being the love that you are, and you're focused on love, you're in command of those adamantine particles. And there are lots of them out there that are just kind of tied up in as electrons and atoms and different molecules and all this sort of stuff. But then there are a lot that are just free-flowing, an infinite amount of free-flowing adamantine particles that you can use to do whatever you need to do. In other words, that's why, you look at the Qigong masters who can just through their own love, their own power, arrange the adamantine particles into, say, enough heat that they generate fire, or do other kind of interesting things like that, right? What's happening there is they're using their love to command those adamantine particles into a configuration, right? That basically those adamantine particles are just going to respond to their love. And, some people, I believe another name for those adamantine particles is prana or chi.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. But, and then the one spirit is this giant fabric, okay, that is basically a continuous fabric through all of existence. Okay, so basically it allows instantaneous communication. I love what that famous experiment that that guy, I think his name was Clive Baxter.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
Clive Baxter.
Yeah, he was that guy. I read about him in The Secret Life of Plants. Yep. And he did that famous. He was a great what do they call it, cryptologist, somebody who does like lie detectors and all that sort of stuff. And he worked for the government, and he hooked up like lie detectors to plants and figured out that these plants had real feelings, and the plants could feel your intention, and you couldn't even fake out the plants. You could they knew your intention, and he did all these tests scientifically with lie detectors to prove all this, right? But part of that was they determined that if you had a relationship with a plant, and it was on the other side of the world, and all of a sudden something bad happened to you, instantaneously that plant registered on that scientific device.
Wow. Instantaneous.
There was no time lag, like zero time lag as far as anybody could tell. Like, how is that? Well, to me, that's the power of the one spirit. It's to me the idea that everything is connected. That is, if you're holding, say, a spoon in your hand, this is just an analogy. As soon as you move one end of the spoon, the other end of the spoon moves instantaneously. In other words, that's how connected everything is.
Like a seesaw.
So it's, that's the one spirit. It connects everything. It brings unity to everything. The adamantine particles are these generic particles that basically allow us to all be from the same matter, but then through our love creates the individuality that we see in the universe. And so, I do want to make that distinction that you mentioned about electromagnetism. Electromagnetism is just basically a subset of electricity. It's moving electrons through space, creates that magnetic field, and that's kind of coupled. And that's within the realm of conservation, the conservational field of energy, which we know exists in the entire universe. But the interesting thing, the reason the universe hasn't thermonuclear just combusted through the second law of entropy, or through entropy, which is the second law of thermodynamics, the reason that hasn't happened is because of love. Because love is the power that's actually causing everything to get organized, and it's actually causing everything to go along its path. So that's actually what's causing the whole thing to remain in balance and continue to grow and evolve.
This is a great. Okay, that leads me into this next idea of, and actually it's alchemy. So let's just talk about like cacao alchemy, and this can be applied towards, let's say, like Masaru-Emoto's research on water, where you imprint your consciousness onto water, and we all know, we've all seen the experiments when he imprints love onto it, the crystalline structure and the formation comes into form. So water that's in formation has information. We know water is like an informational panel, like an informational storehouse. Well, the same thing I believe is going on with chocolate, and you can go into this a little further. So like the alchemy of chocolate, and from a chocolatier's perspective, is like when it goes from the whole bean, it starts out as a bean, and then it goes through the alchemical process and becomes a chocolate bar. Well, the fats have that structure, and you break that structure like you would like hydrogen bonding in a water, and that the bonds start to loosen up, and you can imprint your energy, your vibration, your whatever word you want to use. You imprint your love onto it, and it creates a new crystalline formation.
Absolutely, and the truth of the matter is, Ronnie, that's the case with everything.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And that's why I like raw food, for that reason. Like, we're talking about electromagnetism, and this is something that I'm really into as far as nutrition, because we're consuming foods that are water rich, that are conductive, that actually enhance our electrical conductivity, which is basically our nervous system.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about Emoto's work, the most important takeaway, at least for me, about that work is that you should be loving yourself.
Exactly. You're mostly water.
I mean, that's just pure logic there.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's scientifically demonstrated, right, that water reacts in that way just by your own intention, just by writing a word, what if you were to actually seriously pray with the most intense positive mantras on yourself?
Yeah. Right. What if we actually did that? What would happen? And that's a practice that's been passed on for all of human history. And wow, that's okay. That's good. That's real good. so okay. This is where I want to take it, because everything, and actually, interestingly enough, everything that you've been talking about actually leads me into this next topic that I want to get your opinion on, which is in the health food community. Now, this doesn't show up. I figured it out. This doesn't actually show up in the greater world. The greater world loves chocolate. They actually don't have any problem with chocolate. But somewhere in the alternative nutrition world, there's a split of opinions when it comes to cacao. And I'm curious on what your take on that is.
Well, the only reason that's happened is because in our little niche community, people are so focused on food. They're giving food so much energy that because the mind is so focused on it and they're dissecting it and they're trying to see the truth in it and they're trying to see what's right and what's wrong and they're looking at it from every single angle. That's the only reason that this sort of thing has arisen. It's because it's actually an outgrowth of the very nature of the mind itself. Right. See, the mind. What is the mind? Okay. Well, the mind is a two-part mechanism. All right. It's actually our physical brain and nervous system, and then it's this electromagnetic field that completely sort of surrounds our body and is actually kind of basically generated by our whole chakra system, that whole electromagnetic field. Okay. Well, the whole thing about the mind is it's this amazing tool, but what really is it? It's really this biocomputer. It's an information gathering system. It's an information transmitting system. It's an information storage system, and it operates through logic. And that's why it's no accident that our computers are literally modeled after our own minds, because our computers are totally logical and they're all operating like our minds are. Our minds are operating with like kind of plus and minus electrical impulses, and all these plus or minus electrical impulses are making up logical circuits and logic basically. Okay, so that's how our computers work. They all work on ones and zeros, pluses and minuses, plus and minus electrical charge.
It's all linear.
It's all linear, and it's all dualistic. In other words, the nature of the whole thing is one giant dualistic paradigm.
Oh, spot on.
So as soon as you get the mind involved in anything, the mind needs reference points to operate. Right. The mind needs a reference point. Without a reference point, the mind is completely lost. The mind cannot comprehend infinity at all. The higher intellect can kind of understand what infinity is. Sure, we can intellectually understand what infinity is, but the mind can't operate in the realm of infinity. It can't physically chug along. It can't use infinity as its fuel. It can't use infinity as its methodology.
Right. It goes into this, it automatically sets up a duality, like one side will hold this flag, the other side holds this flag, and then it's like they oppose each other, and people don't even know that this is going on. But when I look out onto the world, I can see this like conflict going on inside of people. It's almost like schizophrenia.
Absolutely. That's why the most important thing you can do when it comes to food and diet is eat with love, gratitude, prayer, and humility, because these are all things of the Sacred Heart. And the Sacred Heart's higher intelligence is so much higher intelligent than the mind. It's because basically the Sacred Heart is rooted in infinity. The Sacred Heart can see infinite possibilities. The Sacred Heart has no issue with this at all. And it's always a case-by-case situation. And the Sacred Heart has no issue with that. The mind goes insane with case-by-case situations. The mind can't handle it. The mind wants to simplify because it can barely handle +1 + 1 = 2. And so the mind just wants right and wrong. It just wants, okay, that's right, that's wrong. And so the mind, the intelligences of the heart are all rooted in infinity, and basically like I mentioned, there are 7 basic intelligences. The first intelligence of the Sacred Heart is unity, right? The unity of the universe. Unity is actually a high-level intelligence, right? What's the unity in the situation? Right? The second intelligence is love. Love is like the power of everything, of the entire universe.
It's the generator.
It's the generator. That's right. And then the third intelligence of the Sacred Heart, and they all kind of build on each other, is life. Life itself. Life is just love in action. Life is love manifest.
Wow.
Right? And then the fourth intelligence is respect. And respect is just meaning an honoring of existence, an honoring of that thing as that thing. Yeah. Right. And then it just keeps going. The next intelligence is honesty, and honesty not just in the fact of reporting like a fact or anything like that, but honesty meaning like the golden thread of truth, which is a dynamic thing in all things. right? And then after honesty is justice. Justice is we all kind of know what justice is, but it's fairness. It's like, okay, let's just be fair in everything. And then finally, the elixir of all these intelligences is kindness. Mm-hmm. And kindness is the most amazing elixir out of all of this. And all these intelligences, when applied to anything, immediately just, it's not even like there's no debate anymore.
Right.
It's like, okay, I get that this is right for me right now, and the heart has that ability to discern, not to really discern what's appropriate for you or not in any given moment, and not without judgment. See, the mind being dualistic is just kind of falls towards this state of judgment, which is really a separation. It's basically, as soon as you judge, that's the only thing that we're capable of messing up around anyway, is judgment. I mean, that's the only, quote, sin of a child of God is judgment. So as soon as we kind of say, hey, I'm just not going to judge, right, then I'm not going to separate things away. I'm not going to say, oh, you're bad or that's bad, stay away. Or it's like, because a person who really has, like you said, in our community, who's like just thinks that, cacao is the scourge of the earth or something like that, whenever they get around cacao, they're probably going to have some sort of energetic reaction to it.
Yeah, it happened. It's literally like, my thing is like, I don't care what anyone eats. I don't care what your preference is. That is the beauty of us being humans, is that we have freedom of discernment and choice for our life. But when it gets to this whole neurotic behavior, like on Facebook or on YouTube, where people are just like, they literally can't handle it. They see something and they automatically like go through these like freak out sessions. So what you're saying is so powerful and so, every fiber of my being is just kind of like standing up, just listening to you talk about this.
Well, yeah, and the reason why people go through freak-out sessions is because their mind is so invested in that position that what happens is they start freaking out. And what causes them to freak out is the ego, because the ego is nothing but the mind's self-generated mechanism to protect its own investments in whatever, to protect its own investments in some idea, to protect its own investments in some self-made identity, to protect its investments in whatever. So as soon as those investments that the mind has made in some sort of structure, right, as soon as those investments are threatened, pop comes the ego. And the ego comes in with swords and like, oh man, okay, I'm gonna prove my position. I'm gonna prove them wrong with logic and emotion and all kinds of stuff, And that's where we get in trouble, because as soon as the ego gets involved, basically there's like a little mini war going on, because the ego is basically saying, oh, I'm going to protect the mind's position. I'm going to protect the mind's investments in some sort of structural, whatever the structure is, some concept or principle or whatever.
You just said a mouthful, man. The word investment is so key, and I've been saying this for a long time, is that your life, the outcome of your life is dictated by the investments you make from a moment-by-moment basis. And this is so key right here about the mind's proclivity towards making investments in its own reference points that it's set up for itself.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Remember, because without reference points, the mind is lost. It's in slippery ground, and it's got two big fears. The big one is losing control, but the ultimate one is death. And so the mind can't handle that, and it knows eventually it'll face death, because it's itself just structure, and all structure is mortal. Okay, all structures, I don't care what the structure is, that's an inherent natural characteristic of structure itself. Love is immortal. Love will go on forever. And so the thing is, the mind being a kind of this control freak, and it's a control freak because it's afraid of death, and that's why it's so steeped in investments, because because the nature of structure is conservatism, right? Basically, what happens is because structure is mortal by definition, its strongest character suit is conservatism, conservatism, because that's the only way it can try and stay alive. That's the only way it can gain time is try and be conservative and protect its investments and structure. But eventually, when the ego dies and the Sacred Heart reigns supreme, then it's like that. Then the mind goes back into its original role, which its original role is just to carry out the dictates of the Sacred Heart. And in that original space of being in the now, and in that original space of just listening to the Sacred Heart and carrying out the dictates of the Sacred Heart and not falling into judgment, the mind actually falls into a state of total bliss.
Yeah, so you see that a lot of times when these hard-nosed business people, say, for example, they go to a sacred medicine ceremony, or someone slips them some psilocybin or something like that, and then they have some incredible, like, heart-opening, incredible realization of a possibility they never knew was possible, and all their judgments that they thought this was like a quote-unquote drug, even though everything that they put in their body has been a drug from day one. We won't go into that, but they have this huge heart opening, and all their previous judgments, they have to face it, and then it's like it transforms their entire existence.
That's the power of plant medicines, And I just want to say something. Anybody who has a proclivity to experience that realm, I just highly recommend doing it from a space of really the right space. Like it's really a soul. It's really a soul calling, and it should only be experienced with real shaman in nature with loved ones, and there really needs to be a true preparation. I mean, that sort of stuff is not stuff to play around with. That's all I want to say on that.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, and it's not to be meant to be taken out of context or as a promotion. It's just an example. And cacao is no different from that. Cacao has always been a ceremonial tool, and just touching on that subject too, is that I think like kind of like the health leaders or the raw food leaders or whoever, they kind of get bent out of shape on this subject, because I think, and you can touch on this for me, I think a lot of people abuse it because it is a power plant. It's one of these noble power plants of the world, and it's one of the most powerful caloric foods. So you can do it in excess, and we have it in such abundance, but I think people abuse it. I know that I'm been guilty of that many times, and I've matured with this food, and I realize that this is actually a tool to for whatever activity, whether it be working out, maybe I want to write, something like that, or to dial in certain herbs, but it's definitely something that should be done with respect and love.
Absolutely. I mean, that's everything you put in your body should be done with respect and love, and especially cacao. I mean, cacao, like you said, is a historical superfood, a historical shamanistic medicine. It's been in the medicine bags of all the shamans of Central and South America for eons. So it's definitely a noble food that needs to be respected and eaten in moderation. And like all things should be eaten in moderation. Really, that's the key. Like I said before, it's really about eating with love and gratitude, humility. That's the key. Never eat with guilt. Never eat anything with guilt. I don't care what it is. Never eat it with guilt. Because in the presence of guilt, it messes up the whole mechanism by which your body can extract the nutrition from the food and the love from the food. I mean, really, ultimately, what you're nourished by is love. It's the love in the food that your body's actually nourished by. It's not so much. I mean, I'll give you an example. Really, like even if you look at something like sun gazing, one of the powerful things about sun gazing is it's the light that generates all the frequencies of the trace minerals in the solar system that your body's utilizing besides other things. You don't even necessarily need those actual physical elements. Those physical trace elements, those trace minerals in your body. If you're sun gazing, you're actually generating the frequencies that those trace minerals are putting off in your body, and your body's using those those frequencies to do its functions. So it's so much about frequency and vibration and the love coming through all that. And that's why I say never to eat with guilt, only because in the presence of guilt, you're kind of telling your body, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, or this is bad for me, or it's poisonous, or whatever, and it just messes up the whole process. Then your body ends up not being able to extract the love from the food, and then you waste all this energy trying to get this food out of your body. And so that's why I say, I mean, with anything, moderation, love, gratitude, thank all the plants and animals that have and people that have through their service have given you this food, because that's the real key at this point in time is kind of revolutionizing our way of thinking about food and diet, and really from the foundation of a perspective of love and gratitude. If that's not there, you can run around in circles all day long, trying to consume all kinds of stuff. And it's at the end of the day, it might get you a little further down the road, but ultimately it's not going to get you that much further down the road.
Right. It's like this obsession with food, really, like just like anything, food is a tool. And I feel like, really at the core of the raw food movement, really what that is to me is actually the greatest extraction method for taking somebody out of the synthetic, the fake, the phony, artificial structural setup of the mind, and to bring them more into their heart. But it's not like ayahuasca where it just pushes you through. It's kind of like it opens the door and it's like, okay, take a look at this. This is what's actually going on behind the curtains, and you have a choice if you want to actually do the work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great thing. I mean, basically getting into a raw food lifestyle is almost a form of fast and prayer. I mean, basically, you're kind of fasting from all the heavy, dense, low frequency foods that are being marketed out there in the marketplace. And it's kind of like it's allowing a greater percentage of water to come through your body. And water alchemically is magnetic. And that water is supporting that primal magnetism of the Sacred Heart. Naturally, when you start eating a diet rich in high water content plant foods, you're supporting the very spiritual power of your Sacred Heart. That's why so many people actually have a spiritual awakening when they get on this kind of lifestyle, because not only are they cleansing their body of a lot of dense food, but they're empowering the Sacred Heart as well. They're freeing up the mind. They're clearing the mind. So the raw food lifestyle is a very powerful stepping stone to get onto a more spiritual path. Absolutely. I can't more than agree.
Yeah, and man, there's so many different ways to expand this and to go in different channels. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the show and bringing a completely renewed perspective on all these things. And at the core of it all, it really does come down to love. That's so beautiful.
It absolutely does, Ronnie. And I love you, and I think everything you're doing out there is just amazing. I'm so excited about your path and what you're doing out there, and I'm just proud of you. That's all I got to say.
I truly appreciate that. And so for everyone out there, you just put out a new chocolate bar.
That's right. It's our mocha bar. It's sweetened with coconut palm sugar. And it is got Pete's Organic Gaia coffee in it, which is an organic coffee put out by Pete's Coffee, which is a pretty well-known coffee out there. And it also has a green coffee bean extract that we've sourced from Omeka in it as well. And
wow.
And yeah, so far the word on the street is people are going crazy over it. So
my God.
Yeah, so we're really stoked we're really stoked about this bar. So yeah, it's exciting.
This is so great. I just want to say real quick from my own vantage point, I've never been like, bashing coffee. I never really got on that kick, but I've never really been into it either. But the green coffee extract is a really amazing discovery and a really great alternative, and to combine it with with the delivery of chocolate. I'm stoked to try it. I have to. I mean, it's not out on the shelf. I gotta order it from the website or something because I gotta try this.
Yeah, it's available on our website now if you go to sacredchocolate.com, and stores are starting to order it. So it'll get out there more and more as time marches on. So.
I have a feeling this may become the most popular chocolate bar.
Yeah.
People are like, I can have my coffee and chocolate?
I mean, you just, it just keeps getting better. That's all I got to say.
Oh, right on. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Steve. This was awesome.
Ronnie, a pleasure. Thanks for having me on your show, and all the best. And I'll see you real soon, I'm sure.
Right on. All right, everyone. You heard it here first. Welcome to another edition of the Expanded Health and Human Potential Radio Show. We'll catch you guys next time.